Welcome to today's Destination Unknown. I'm your host, Alyssa Hall. This is my fourth attempt today to try to record a video because Huckleberry the pug assistant is nonstop making noise in the background. I've now made peace with this to her panting sound that you hear in the background. I can't stop it from happening. I have to surrender control, but I have to admit that to you right now. So when you hear the panting in the background, that's my dog. Let's keep it moving because today we are here not to talk about pugs, but to talk about Kabbalah. And when I came to the idea that I wanted to introduce the concept of Kabbalah, or as it's sometimes pronounced, Kabbalah, I pronounce it Kabbalah. I don't know if there's a definition or a pronunciation which is more correct than the other. I think it's a little bit like tarot versus tarot. People kind of have a different way of saying it. I don't know. The Oxford English Dictionary would probably help me out here as well, but let's keep it moving. So Kabbalah is, what is it? And then how to break down such a huge topic was what I kind of came to, because I am not an expert in this field. I have studied some Kabbalah in my past, but even having had those studies behind me, I don't feel prepared to give that information effectively away. And I think part of that is because Kabbalah is rooted in Judaism. So when you come to the subject itself, it's so large and it's rooted as a form of Judaic mystic knowledge. It was some of the mystic teachings that were being passed down from Judaic religious learning. However, where that comes to play and how we get that in today's times, there's so many diluted paths. Just looking at Kabbalah, there are various definitions depending on what you're looking at and how they even try to define what Kabbalah means or what it is. And then, of course, like we just said, it's rooted in Judaic wisdom, but there's also a Christian Kabbalah and a Hermetic Kabbalah. So there are different forms that have taken Kabbalah studies and then I guess adapted it to something else or expanded upon it perhaps. It's a huge, huge subject. So if you find it interesting and you want to get digging for more, there is a lot more out there to be found. That being said, today all I want to try to do is give a short definition of Kabbalah and then talk about the red string. The red string is a practice, people who wear a red string around their left wrist, that's a practice that comes from Kabbalah. It was made pretty popular in the 90s when Madonna started wearing a red string, and that kind of gained a lot of attention. Being a henna, that's my pug tipping the camera and trying to get my attention today. It is hell on it for me to try to get this video done with these dogs today. But we're moving forward. I'm not stopping another one. I'm plowing ahead, friends, as I was just saying. So Madonna kind of brought a lot of popular pop culture attention to Kabbalistic studies when she started doing it and wearing the red string. And I was about to say she also kind of did the same thing for henna. And I'm a henna artist. I have been for 20 years. But when I first started in my path with henna in the early 2000s, that was where everybody seemed to know or who have seen henna first, was the Madonna video and Madonna wearing henna. And we were pretty far down the pop culture timeline from that. So some people may still remember that. Well, she also was doing the same thing with Kabbalah and her studies at the same time. I don't know, no shade to Madonna. She may still be studying that. I respect her spiritual path. But of course, like a lot of things, when the celebrities bring attention to that culture, suddenly we begin to see it being monetized and it's being turned into a capitalist venture, and that's what you want to be very careful of. So when we're talking about Kabbalah, what is Kabbalah? I'm trying to let her lick my fingers so she will shut up, you guys. This is mania today. Mania today for poor Alyssa. Okay, what is it? The Kabbalah are a group of sacred texts, and they're thought to explain some of the mystic understanding that was lost to time. So part of this, the system of thought itself is predates all recorded religion, but it's thought to predate that. If you follow the literature, it's believed that this is mystic knowledge that came originally from Eden and that this was passed from us. It contains the true nature of God, the true nature of mankind, as well as what was lost and known originally on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not the tree of knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. So these concepts were all kind of couched into some of these studies in early Judaic writings. We know that one text called the Zohar, which was published in the 13th century, that has the origins that predate religion when they're talking about those stories. But it's not, the Kabbalah itself is not something that's part of the regular, so to speak, text of the Torah. So it's not considered a mitzvah or a precept of that particular religious doctrine. So that's why we know it's outside some of the normal studies. It was considered mystic learning. Not everyone was allowed to have this knowledge in times past as well. So it was guarded and secreted knowledge that is thought to be more readily available in today's times. So these sacred texts are the ones that are passing along this information. Another precept that you'll hear a lot when it comes to Kabbalistic studies, and I did this myself, is they talk about the 72 letters of the name of God. And this is a way each one of the letters represents almost a facet, is the way I think of it. If you think of a jewel, has many facets that you can look at that showcase what it is. That would be a one way to look at all of the different meditations on the nature of God. And that's another Kabbalistic study that I've done in my past. How Kabbalah and tarot kind of intermingle and come together is a whole nother subject. I might try to do a third one. So this one, we're going to talk about the red string. The next one, I'd like to talk about the tree of life and what that is. And then in the last one, maybe we'll try to find a way for Alyssa to get the tarot and the Kabbalah to come together. It's a challenge, such a challenge for me, and I've studied this material. So I find it very daunting and off-putting almost sometimes when I'm studying and trying to bring this to you as well. So when we're talking about the red thread in particular, where does it come from in Kabbalah? Where does that practice come from? We see that it's mentioned as a practice that is done. Let's see, I've got it here in my notes, and I made a lot of notes today so I could have that with me. Genesis 38 mentions a scarlet thread, which is being worn about the wrist, and it forms some form of protection in the story that's being told in that area. I won't give you quotes or anything. It's kind of boring and dry. But there is very distinctly a scarlet thread being discussed in the Old Testament in that area. It's meant to be a talisman. So we know right away that it's meant to ward off evil. It's a protective measure. The reason why it's red was something I wanted to know. I was very curious about that, and I wasn't able to find that in my studies just when I was going through everything to get my material ready for today. I couldn't seem to find out why red. I do have some material to discuss last for today about red threads in other cultures as well and why it's red there, but I couldn't find out why it was red in Kabbalah. So if you know and you're a Kabbalist, let me know. I'd be curious. But in particular, the thread itself is knotted 7 times while saying a specific prayer, which is thought to be that particular thread's prayer, or as it's called, the Ben Porat Yosef. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry to any of our Judaic friends who are listening and know that I am butchering your language. I'm trying, I swear. But that is very specifically a prayer that you recite when it's also recited when you're leaving home. But it's thought that by saying this prayer as you're knotting each one of those 7 knots, and then it's knotted by somebody onto you, which we'll get to next. But it's thought to invoke the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. I almost did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles joke on you guys, but I restrained myself. You really ought to give me credit for that. But in any case, in all seriousness, yes. So that particular prayer is thought to call upon the energy of the archangels, and that is, or archangels, and that is why we see it being used as a talisman to ward off evil, to repel the evil eye, to keep you safe from any evil influences that might be coming your way. It's worn on the left wrist specifically because it's thought that in this particular form of study and in others, they do often presuppose that the left side of the body of the spiritual self is the receiving side. So in order to receive this protection the most, or make it the most effective talisman for you, you would wear it on your left. Having said that, you will also sometimes see people wearing it on their right. And I even saw some questions of some people who were out there saying, hey, is it really bad to wear it on your right? I didn't know. I've been wearing it there. Should I switch? And it seems like from some of the leaders, some of the websites that I went to, in case you're curious also, of course, I was at Wiki looking at information there, but also Kabbalah.com, and that's KABBALAH.com, and also another website called MyJewishLearning.com. So they had some more website material out there addressing some of these concerns, and their approach was the right side isn't incorrect, it's just less effective. So it's not negating any of that. It's just not you're not receiving it as much as you could be potentially, according to the belief. So that's what it is. It's knotted 7 times, and then someone that you love and trust and believe is also working in your best interest to protect you is the person to say those prayers, knot that knot, and then knot it on you to actually tie it onto your wrist. It's then thought to just be left there. So when do you take it off? Is the idea is you never take it off. It will stay there until it falls off of its own accord. And the idea is that by the time it falls off, it's absorbed all the evil that it can, that it has protected you as far as the talisman has the energy to protect you. It's been expended now, and at that expenditure, it falls off the body. And so the idea is that you would wear it literally until it were to do so. So, some people, they don't want to do that. Nowadays, you'll see bracelets and they take it on and off and they decide what they want to put it. To me, that seems very, it just seems very watered down and very like just borrowing from people's culture and not being respectful. And that, I think, is the biggest thing I come back to when I'm trying to talk about Kabbalah. I want to be respectful for the religion and the studies and the people who have invested their entire lives into this study. And I recognize my own ignorance, but I'm trying, and we're all here trying. So let's keep moving forward. So that's what it is and why they wear it on the left, how you prepare it. It's also thought that the wearer should refrain while they're having this. It's not only there to protect you, it's a reminder for yourself, kind of like we talked about our candles. Even if they're not lit, if they're sitting there on your desk, they're a call to remind you meditatively about whatever it's there to signify. Your candle might draw in money, protection, repel evil, whatever it is. The same concept applies to the red thread in the idea that as this is being put on you, you should purify yourself of thought and of action. And then while you're wearing that thread, you want to refrain, the wearer of the thread should refrain from negative thoughts, negative speech. All of those forms of negativity are going to garner negativity. And so you want to refrain from that to very effectively try to repel it from your world. That sounds like really great advice to me, honestly. One of the things I really adhere to is how much, and specifically Kabbalah, but this is maybe true for Judaic practices in general. I will let my other friends who study it let me know. They really put a lot of emphasis on what you say and how you are speaking, the words, what you are calling in, the power of words, both as they're spoken and as they're thought of, the power of words in our mind. And I think that's just so relevant. I think we recognize that more in today's times in popular culture than maybe times past. So, all right, so the practice itself, I talked about it being mentioned in Genesis 38, but when you talk about the practice of wearing a red thread, that really didn't come into the vogue until it seems like the 1900s. So what was the gap between the beginning of religion for forever until about 110, 20 years ago? I don't know. I don't know why it became a vogue or it suddenly became a practice that suddenly, I would say it came in vogue in the late 90s, because I use that specifically in vogue as a phrase, meaning a lot of people adopted the practice without doing a lot of research into what it meant. They just thought it looked cool. or they were just imitating Madonna, who knows. So, last thing I want to talk about is there are other forms of religious studies that also embrace a red thread, sometimes even on the wrist or other parts of the body. So, let's talk about that before we go, because multicultural understanding and metaphysical approach is a big meta message here on this channel. So the red thread of fate is something you hear about in Chinese belief. They will wear a red string around the finger most commonly. And this is thought to be, it's also called the red thread of marriage, because this is thought to help you find your ideal mate, or that by wearing this, it begins to draw your fate to you, so that that person you are meant to be with is drawn to you. Is a little bit of, as I understand it, the belief behind the Chinese red thread. And then I also, red for them specifically, I understood that in Chinese culture and also in Hindu belief and culture, they also will ascribe the color red as being an auspicious color. It invites luck. It invites good positivity around the wearer. So to have red or to wear red is to invite that positivity and prosperity into your life. And so I think that's, again, the idea is that you have red, a red thread in Chinese culture, because it's auspicious, it brings in that luck, it draws that person to you. Interestingly enough, over in Japan, they will use a red thread around the ankle as another practice over there. And I believe that's still thought to be a blessing / protection to wear that. And the last one I came across, the red string in Hinduism, they'll call it the kalava. Isn't that interesting? Kalava, Kabbalah. I think that there's something there. I really do. But in any case, the red string is called the kalava, and it's thought to invoke divine blessings, and also to uphold and to remind the wearer to uphold and adhere to Hindu beliefs and culture and practices. So to remind you to live that good, honest life of following your spiritual path. And that seems to be true no matter which spiritual path it seems to apply itself to. So this is today's video cast where I'm constantly showing you my left wrist. Thankfully, Huckleberry has settled down for the end of the video here. And that's what we got to talk about kind of the world's briefest what Kabbalah is. It's really, we didn't even get to the tarot because, like I said, that's a hard subject to come to. And the next one, because I really realized doing this research today that I wanted to get to talking about the tree of life and what that looks like and what it represents in Kabbalah studies, because Kabbalistic studies, that's something I did spend more time in with my tarot studies. But we just don't have time today because we're already almost here at 20 minutes and Alyssa learned her lesson on that 30-minute upload. Oh my God. So let's wrap it up today. Thank you for joining me. If you have any more comments or knowledge to share about Kabbalah or Judaism, Judaic learning, Judaic mysticism, please do enlighten all of us. Share your thoughts. And as always, thank you for joining me. Let's keep listening.